And we are rolling on June 8th at UCLA, where we've been thinking about climate change. And we've been thinking about it from the perspective of facts, from values, and what to do about it, policies. And to open our final summations, so to speak, in a very abbreviated form. Don't start the clock yet.
Oh, I'm not. Do you want me to tell her like 2 minutes, 1 minute ago?
Yeah, that's good, yeah. We will hear first from Suzy from the FACT group.
Hi, everyone, I'm Suzy.
Hi, Suzy.
So, today I will talk about my attitudes and beliefs towards global warming and climate change before I came into this class, before I transferred to UCLA. After I finished my research on my speech, and finally I changed my mind a third time after I watched everybody's speech. So we're going to start with the beginning. And then I'm going to tell you why I chose my final idea, point of view. Okay, so the first one, I was very glued to the idea that global warming totally did exist and we were the main cause of it, because my biology teacher in high school really made an emphasis on it. She said, like, she always constantly gave us tips on like how to make sure that our carbon footprint was reduced, because it was imperative, because in 50 to 100 years our children and our children's children, blah, she made a speech and I believed every word of it. Okay. So yeah, she's like, don't take 5-minute showers, BPA free water bottles, be vegan, blah, blah, blah. So then after I did my speech, I was like, okay, so it doesn't exist. The weather just fluctuates and it's not possible to predict it due to instability and random natural factors. And then after everybody presented, I was like, okay, it does exist, but human activity is not 100% responsible for it. It's not even the major perpetrator. Natural causes do cause it, but just in general, I think it exists at a very minimal, very minimally. I feel like the world is going to follow, the Earth is going to follow its course of nature. We are going to probably all be extinct. There's going to be another ice age. It's like it's a cycle, and it's going to keep happening. And to back up my ideas, I have, I wanted to bring up the, first we can start with the epoch of policy. So, how is it possible for me, it just doesn't make sense after realizing this and learning about it, just clicked to me that 12,000 years ago, before the age of man-made industrialization, it was 3 times cooler. I mean hotter, and now, 2017, industrialization, bam, mass production of food, agriculture, and it's 3 times cooler than it was before. Does it make sense? The chaos theory was a big one for me. It's kind of a little bit about what I was saying about it's a cycle, it's a feedback. Just gonna go to my next one. And the other one I wanted to talk about was the hiatus theory, and that one is a proven theory from 1998 to 2012. The Earth's global temperature has ceased increasing. Hiatus. That made total sense for me. It hit home. I was like, okay, this definitely exists. This is affecting us. However, it's a natural course, and we have to keep the natural course going and accept it as how it is.
Thank you.
He wants to know how extra it was.
When you hear time from Aliana, then you have 15 absolute extra seconds, and then we're just going to start tapping and screaming at you. Okay, that was very nice, Suzy. That was a great opening. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, and now Artur, also known as Arthur. Big 0. Okay. Oh, Dana already did it. Okay, good. All right. Abigail. Rock and roll. And let's save a little. Oh, it does. And let's do a little baseball stuff here. Christine? No, Christine. 0. Okay. Youngshun. Could you stand up there and be ready to just walk up when she's done? Thank you. So we have an on-decker. And thank you for wearing white.
Oh, yeah. It'd be a floating present.
Live with it.
I have a cream sweater. Would you like me to wear it?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Anyone have a black sweater? Yeah, give her your shirt.
Want my
Jen.
sweater?
That's a good
Wear Jen's sweater.
This is not okay?
It's pretty light, but fine. Let's just do it.
You guys need to translate over.
Better. Yeah, better. Better. Okay, good. Okay, thank you so much.
You want to go?
Too late.
Yeah, so wait, I'll go.
Okay, you can leave. Okay, go ahead. We'll come back to Artur.
Hi guys. So I debated on the fact group about hurricanes and other extreme climate events, including a severe rise in sea levels and tornadoes are imminent consequences of global warming. And ultimately we won the debate because the government didn't meet their burden of proof and they were only able to establish a correlation between global warming and extreme climate events rather than like a direct cause. So today I'm going to discuss what I've concluded from working in a fact group, why this topic is significant, what facts I deem as true and false, and how this debate relates to the real world. During the group process while debating, I discovered that there is a lot of correlation between global warming and harmful consequences, but there isn't enough data to establish a causal relationship between the two factors. Global warming is a significant topic to study because it has ramifications for our citizens and our world. And in terms of extreme climate events, these can damage our infrastructure, which is expensive. Before the debate, I believed that that these extreme climate events were an imminent consequence of global warming because leading scientists believed that it was. But after the debate, I believe that it is probable that extreme climate events were caused by global warming, but there still isn't a direct causal relationship that scientists have been able to prove because they haven't been able to study these events independently with global warming. And I believe that fact debates can be tricky sometimes because people find different evidence from different sources. So I think it's really important to look for credible sources to support your position. And since my topic specifically was kind of broad, we all talked about different climate events, so it made it so the sides didn't totally line up. And it was difficult to argue something that I didn't fully believe in. But finding strong evidence and speaking passionately was ultimately how I had a strong delivery. Though it is commonly accepted now that climate change is real and damaging, it is up to scientists to prove the relationship between global warming and damaging factors, because the denialists will only accept climate change if our facts are accurate and succinct. And we need to continue improving our climate models and funding university research so that climate denialists can see that the evidence is succinct.
Thank you very much. Very nice, Abby. One quick comment while our next speaker is making her way to the podium, that's you, is just a reminder, we didn't really at the time distinguish between weather and climate in a really meaningful way, and I think that's in the literature they do, and that could have been useful. Okay.
Okay, so hi guys, I'm Yungshan.
Hi, Yungshan.
Thank you for pronouncing my right correctly.
Anytime.
Finally. Okay, so today I'll also share about my ideas, like how my ideas changed before the class and after the class. So before the class, I think like most people, I kind of knew about like there's something happening in climate change, but to a really limited extent. I know that global warming is happening, like we're probably the cause of global warming and like this. But after like the whole quarter of this class, I gradually shifted my position, but not going against global warming, but like I'm now like standing in the middle, don't know which side I should believe in. So during this quarter, I learned the power of science because previously, when I saw that my topic is can scientists actually predict future climate, I was like, I'm gonna lose because even if I don't believe in like, because I know like climate has its variability, it's really hard to predict, but globally, when I do research, I do find that our science has really advanced these years. I learned power of science, but I also learned that science in this area is really controversial. So we should remain composure and use critical thinking when we look at the evidence from both sides. This is my thesis. So there are two things drive me to be neutral and skeptical towards both sides, like towards the supporters and the denialists. The one thing I found through the researching process is that there is never single consensus in science. So even authorities in one domain has contradictory ideas. So I use one example saying that like an MIT professor found that there is a correlation in like sea temperature increase and the hurricane intensity, and there's actually a lot of articles saying that his model is not testable, and a bunch of articles says that his model is testable. So,
Right.
but as an outsider, like I have no knowledge in climatology, so I don't know which side to believe in. I'm not intentionally misleading class.
Good.
So what makes things even more complicated is the possibility that science may choose to stand by one side before they actually do their research. So when I checked the authors who oppose this, the MIT professor, I found out like some of them belongs to the same department of NOAA, and they have all publicly stated that they don't believe that global warming is true. So I really question that, do their research findings lead them to reject global warming? Or is there opposition towards global warming that actually drive them to do relevant researches and finding results that support their argument? So scientific findings are never unified, and scientists may have inherent preferences. So in the very beginning, before this class, I believed in everything that science says, and I take it for granted. But now I have started not to take what scientists have stated as granted without my own thoughts.
Good.
I have become much more neutral and like critically thinking on global warming, because I know that for those supporters, they may say these things because they want us to believe in this. But similarly, for the oppositions, they may like using their researches just trying to convince us that this is not true. So that's why I feel like because there are inherent preferences, I cannot believe in any side.
Thank you, Yoon Shun. Can you get my bag? I need green pens and black pens. Okay, we were supposed to do on decks. Okay, go on up. And then on deck after Artur would be, oh, that's Jenny? Okay, thank you.
That makes a lot more sense.
Professor, I think I forgot to print out the second copy of the report.
Okay, you're dogging your homework. Okay, let's move on. Jenny, and then Karina. Hi.
Yeah.
And on deck, who did I say is on deck? I said Karina. She here?
I'm here.
Okay, be over there, please. Rolling.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jenny. So
Hi, Jenny.
before this class, so I had like a set in stone like view of that humans were responsible for global warming. So when in the fact debate, since we're on the government side, like in my mind I thought we're gonna win, or either or. I didn't really think that the opponent can ever really persuade me that humans weren't responsible for global warming, because, you know, why else? Like, we put out CO2 really easy with the fossil fuels. However, this class actually really challenged my belief, and it was like the different debates that I would listen to, and I would actually help like research. And if all, like now, I don't really know if there might even be a climate crisis anymore. And it's true that the Earth has warmed, and the temperatures have warmed, and the oceans have warmed, and the glaciers may have receded, but I disagree with the cause of global warming entirely. Eventually, when I started studying the issue, thinking I need to have a better understanding before which side I actually get to take, because throughout school and the media always claims that we're the cause of global warming. What I discovered is that there's a flaw with the claim that CO2 is the only primary greenhouse gas contributed to global warming. And when I found out how like CO2 is first introduced into atmosphere, it doesn't take long for CO2 to become saturated, which means like after reaching about like 20 parts per million of the atmosphere, the CO2 starts fading. And once CO2 is saturated, it can't really like trap a lot of additional heat, and that like limits the CO2, and it kind of counters like the whole claim that CO2 adds to atmosphere and like will generate heat. So in that sense, like I kind of got a little bit tripped that CO2 is going to be the primary resource. And in addition, I also thought most people, when they call global warming mostly human-made, it's actually not quite. There's a lot of natural things that drive the temperature and its variability due to like incoming solar radiation. But before my debate, I actually had a lot of faith in the scientific consensus, which when you hear like the stats, you're like 95% of the active climate researchers endorse the consensus, and I believe that, you know, it's like 95%. But what I also came across though is if you like look at it carefully, it says intergovernmental, so you kind of could also see the bias from it, because with more than 1,000 published peer reviews questioning the science behind the IPCC report, the IPCC like leaves out a lot of like critical pieces and the data that basically makes unsupporting claims and more of a political motivated agenda. So overall, like there are like valid reasons to conclude that CO2 is not primary forcing agent of global climate change. And it's unfortunate like the media often discards that climate crisis rather than spending more time investigating their views. So therefore, I think we should question both assumptions and politics and policies before defending climate activists in order to make sense of the potential consequences of such a complex issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, for finishing on time. Very nice. Is there a black pen somewhere you could give me? And on deck will be Michael. Michael, row the boat ashore.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Karina.
Hi, Karina.
And before I came to this class, I actually had no opinion or no real knowledge of global warming, just because it was never in any of my classes in high school or community college or anything like that. But then when I came here and started watching the Inconvenient Truth,
too.
I started thinking that yes, I was convinced that global warming is happening on a catastrophic level and that humans are responsible for it, just because of how Al Gore presented all the facts and statistics with his video. But then I started researching for my own topic, which is if computer models are accurately able to predict future climate events. And I started to realize that no, I don't think that global warming is as catastrophic as it was previously said, which made me very skeptical, especially because many computer models that were used are not reliable, not accurate, and are flawed in many ways. And many of them overestimated global warming, actually. Since 1997, there has not been any temperature increase, and that's a little strange because we're still producing as much, if not more, CO2 and all of the other fossil fuels that we use. And another thing is that I strongly believe that we are not able to know for sure about global warming is that the atmosphere is unpredictable, and we do not know everything that's happening, just like how many galaxies there are, or if there's humans in the other part of the universe. we just don't know. And all these factors coming together cannot be used to accurately predict if there is a global warming and if it's as catastrophic as it is said. Another thing that I found interesting was that Al Gore stated that glaciers are melting and polar bears are dying and drowning, which touched my heart a lot. But then I researched and I found that the ice caps have been increasing by 50% since 2012, according to NASA. And that made me think, wow, well, how is that possible? But then I started researching more and I found out the Holocene period, the temperatures were increasing, the glaciers melted off completely, mammoths died, many animals went extinct. But the fact that we have glaciers today proves that, I guess, the temperature just goes up and down, and that's pretty much the cycle of life and the cycle of the Earth. And there's no long-term historical data to suggest that there's 100% guarantee that global warming is catastrophic. And that is why I stand by my opinions and my fact debate that I debated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina, for not using all your time. That's excellent. Thank you. Okay, on deck would be Shane. Well, maybe.
Okay, so before this class started, I didn't really have like a huge opinion on like if climate change was real or not. I always kind of leaned towards that it was real, and that was really based on just like bandwagon, I guess, if you're looking at like a fallacy, because it just seemed popular, which probably means I should stop reading some Twitter. But after doing this class and doing the debates, I still think that climate change is real, but now I feel like I have more of like an educational, like critical basis for like my understanding. So for my topic, it was the fact debate of the scientists using computer models are able to accurately predict future climate events. And when I first saw this topic, I totally just like didn't believe that like we could find a computer model that would actually like accurately predict. So like since Yunchen in her findings was able to find models that actually have accurately predicted, like according to what our resolution stated, I would have to say that's true, but only to a certain extent. I don't think that it's like accurate enough that we should actually use it to make decisions about global warming. And then another thing that influenced my decision was hearing other people's research. So a lot of the times that I did vote for the opposition, that kind of insinuated that global warming like wasn't causing anything. Except the reason why I kept voting for the opposition was based more on presumption, not necessarily on that their evidence was better. Because a lot of the times I would agree with a lot of the evidence and the credible sources that the government was stating. But I just couldn't vote for them based on like how I was rating the actual debates. And then third, another thing that influenced me were the articles that we read in class. So I noticed that a lot of the articles that said global warming just is like bogus were really just they kept focusing on how like it's better for the economy, like we don't have to like focus on that stuff right now. But I feel like if there like is evidences that I was finding in the debates, that kind of seems like they have some sort of like political agenda, I guess. And then the other articles I was like more in agreement with, and that is because they kind of like affirmed some of the things that I learned from the other debates. But I am glad that I did learn both sides of the argument, because they kind of helped me like
1 minute.
get back to that climate change, like it can be real and it is real, but that like I can understand like where it actually comes from now, instead of just like reading stuff and being like, those people say this. So I was able to actually like come to consensus like on my own understanding. That's it.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Shane. On deck, Tanner.
Alrighty. Hi, everybody.
Where's
I'm
Tanner?
Shane.
Oh.
Hi, Shane.
Thanks, Daniel.
Hi, Shane.
So I debated a fact case about hurricanes and other extreme climate events or imminent consequences of global warming, but I actually don't want to talk about that. I want to focus more on the value of good debate, which is something I took away from this class. And started thinking about that a lot more when we read the Dan Cahan article about why we are poles apart on climate change. And that really struck me because it was talking about the danger of like an us versus them mentality, like the kind of the logical fallacy, or not necessarily logical fallacy, but just the foolishness in like painting the other side as, stupid and morally depraved, and, how could you even believe that in the first place? Like, it kind of just ostracizes people, doesn't really add credibility to your argument. So that got me thinking a lot about that. It's not something I'd ever really applied to climate change, so that was an interesting connection. And then we started reading, then we read The Climate of Complete Certainty by Bret Stephens. And then going off that, it was kind of talking about framing your theory or whatever you believe as like hard fact and law, and the danger of that, because if you debunk even one aspect of that, it's like your whole credibility goes out the window. And then especially with the climate debate, I thought that was interesting because like when you're basing a lot of your argument on models, which like by definition and by design aren't supposed to be like hard, fact. It's just more like, here's a trend, here's how we think things are generally gonna go, like, and so to say, like, to take something like that and use it as like, this is the law is pretty dumb, if you ask me. So I thought that was interesting. And so then this whole idea of the climate debate being settled, it runs contrary to good science and good debate, and the idea of coming to some sort of agreement and understanding, not this idea of like a consensus or whatever, which is something I kind of accepted just as fact coming into this class. And so I think it all comes down to when we're talking about a good debate. With the climate debate, we're never going to make effective change in policy if we don't get people on board with the facts of the debate and what's really true, and just convincing people that this is something that needs to be debated in the first place. And so I think through this class we've seen the value of having an open forum on a subject like this, and now it's piqued all of our interest in climate change, and I think in a way that wasn't before, and it certainly did for me. So I think good debate is really powerful in that sense.
Thank you, Shane. Okay, Artur, you're on deck. Go up there. Begin.
Okay.
You're wearing white.
It's cream.
Can you loan them your coat or something?
I don't think it'll fit.
Whatever, okay. You're ahead.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how I feel about climate change, and I'm going to get into my debates a little bit, and I'm just going to wrap it all up with a quick call to action. So the Earth is getting hotter. That's a fact that almost no one will dispute. Most scientists and most people believe that the Earth is going to continue to get hotter. That poses a problem. How much will our world get hotter? We can only speculate, and we've shown ourselves to be not very good at speculation. How big of a problem is global warming? So far, not catastrophic, but we're still not great at predicting the future. What should we do about it? Here's what I think. Fossil fuels are not available in an endless supply. Eventually, we will run out of oil, and eventually we will run out of coal. How soon? Again, all we can do is speculate. Bottom line, the clock is ticking. If not for the environment, then for our supply of fuel. Based on that, I think more attention and investment should be given to renewable energy. To be clear, I'm not advocating for a complete end to fossil fuel use, at least not yet. What I am advocating is that these resources will not last forever, nor will they always be as cheap as they are today. This is a fact. And when this does happen, we will need a suitable replacement ready and waiting. The longer we put this off, the more painful this transition is going to be. If the post-oil days are steadily approaching, why are we squabbling about building crude oil pipelines instead of investing in wind and solar? Why are we debating fracking instead of trying to find new hydroelectric projects to invest in? Yes, some of these technologies might be expensive today, but they're always going to be that way if we don't invest in research and development. Computers used to take up an entire room, and they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Today, you can buy an iPhone for a few $100s that is thousands of times more powerful than those supercomputers. The same revolution could be possible with renewable energy if we put our minds to it. I debated two cases. The first was about whether human activity is responsible for global warming or not. Regardless of what I argued in my debate, I'm convinced that human activity is responsible for some amount of climate change that we have experienced. How much of it, I think, is less easy to discern. How much human activity will affect our climate going forward is even less certain. But just because there is a small chance that people have nothing to do with the changing climate doesn't mean that we should not take steps to mitigate some of global warming's potential effects. The second topic I debated was whether or not scientists can make accurate predictions using computer models. I'm convinced that they have not, but not that they cannot. The overwhelming majority of computer models could not predict future temperatures. Say what you will about our current models, but we won't know how accurate they are until it's too late to matter. To sum it all up, I think it prudent to quote Bret Stephens that certitude begets hubris. The science is not settled on climate change. It just isn't. But that doesn't mean that climate deniers are right or that alarmists are wrong, or vice versa. What it means is that what we must all do is inform ourselves with as impartial information as we can get our hands on and keep learning more about the world that we live in. Some very smart people tell us that climate change poses a clear and present danger, and we only have one planet to live on. So, would it kill you to turn the lights off?
Thank you. Yeah, okay, on deck is John Lamy, whatever it is. Rock and roll, baby.
Hi class, my name is Arthur.
Hi, Artur.
Debate for the topic which I was interested in most before going into this class is whether the human activity is responsible for global warming. And as a result of participating in debate, I found myself on the side for which I was debating, which is a negative, stating that human activity is not the primary source of global warming. And essentially my argument was based on 3 points, which was showing the disproportionate correlation between the NASA index of the rises in temperature and the industrialization index, which shows that it is not only problematic to conclude the causal link between global warming and industrialization and human activity, but also the correlation, since those two phenomena just don't correlate. Now, as to go into my opinion before this class, I really didn't have time to, and didn't have desire to conduct any meaningful research to discover facts about different issues and make my own conclusion whether human activity really causes global warming. This is why I never really had an opinion. But what I was witnessing is just going into social media and seeing those websites and news and different news outlets ostracizing people for not agreeing with the 97% scientific consensus was something that I really saw, and this was dominating the news industry. And as a result, I was very skeptical to believe that you have to believe to this assertion that human activity is causing global warming only on the basis of scientific community agreeing 97% that this is really the case. So I was really skeptical to that. And just this mentality of ostracizing people for something that they believe in, which is really called as ad hominem fallacy, when you attack a person's personality and not his argument, is really something dangerous that really creates an obstacle to the critical thinking process. So going from that, since I participated in the fact debate, it is important to talk about the facts that I deem valid and true after this class. And as I was mentioning before, I really think that human activity is not the primary cause, because in our debate we stipulated that primary cause means the most important factor that contributes to global warming, which was not the case. And I really do believe that those GCM models that we're dealing with, most of them, that yield the results of global warming increasing at a rate of 2 degrees Celsius by the end of the century is really unfounded, because the models that don't make an assumption for the cloud feedback value come up with a different number, which is significantly less. So, yeah, with that I yield my time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Artur. On deck, Samuel. No, excuse me, Krystal. Krystal Blue Persuasion.
Oh, never mind.
Is Krystal in the house?
Yeah, right here.
Okay, stand up there. Good. Rock and roll, Mr. Alamy.
Alright, so I'm just going to start off, I'm John, I'm going to start off with a couple of thoughts after my own debate, which was about environmental concerns being more important than economic growth. Then I'm going to talk about an important experience that I think has really shaped my views on climate change and what the debates in the class have kind of upholded. So, for my own debate, I just kind of realized that environment and the economy, they're both very important, but I think we need to be forward-looking, and we need to have this kind of idea of having environment as a prerequisite, okay? Keeping a mental account of externalities that we may impose on the environment in the future. I think it's very reasonable for companies to make profit today, but not recklessly endanger the environment in the future so badly that they're going to be having lawsuits and a bad reputation in the future that will ultimately cost them more money if they just shrunk their profits a little bit that day and time back then. So I think being forward-looking for firms is a really great way to kind of get a balance between these two interests. And now for kind of the class theme and overall thoughts. So last year, important experience I had was I worked as a Sunrun solar consultant. What I would do is I would go into people's houses upon invitation, and then I would
Yeah, right.
and then I would sit down with them and educate them about solar. And it really was about educating them. I could have really tried to sell them, but I was paid hourly, so it didn't really matter. I was just trying to, educate them about it. And what I would do is I would show them the two bills, and here's your electric bill with solar, and here's your electric bill with SDG&E, Southern California Edison. And when it's plainly lower than one, to me it just made sense. Okay, if an energy is the same kilowatts, it's the same quality, it's the same exact power that you're paying for, but it's cheaper, and it's not subject to these crazy hikes that we know in the summer, why not do it? And on top of that, there's no chance, or at least there's such a little chance of environmental externalities. We're not talking about coal being burned, we're talking about solar. So I think to myself, for residential homeowners, this was such a great choice. I wanted to extend this and apply this to policy, and if we're not at that point where our, maybe wind is still a little bit higher than coal, let's get it to that point below, because once we're at that point, we can really start accounting for these externalities in the future and all these negative environmental impacts that I think really will be mitigated once we get to that lower cost point. And so I want to just kind of wrap up and say that I have really much enjoyed the debate process for something like this, because it's very, it can get very contentious, and people, especially in the media, love to kind of contort and make the evidence snuggle with their ideology, and it's very nice to kind of see different sides come in and not be so polarized. And I look forward to the debate in the future and for scientific research and evidence coming out and further growing in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alamy. On deck, Jennifer.
Woo! It was a good time. I'll stay.
Okay.
And my second point, done!
Okay. Amber is red. Okay.
What? Oh. Okay.
My color coding system.
Do I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hi, I'm Krystal, and
Hi, Krystal.
I debated the case. Environmental concerns are more important than economic growth, and I was on the government side, and we argued that because all life is valuable, we should therefore focus more on environmental concerns and do whatever we can to mitigate climate change before we focus on the economy. And before this debate in this class, I thought that global warming was real, plain and simple, and there's no questioning about it. And so I thought that my debate would be an easy win, because it's obvious that we should do whatever we can to stop this threat to everyone's lives. But yeah, and I also had the mentality that all people who denied climate change or who were willing to put the economy first were just closed-minded, conservative, uneducated people from the middle of America or somewhere.
But after my debate and listening to all of your debates and seeing cases in which the opposition won, I found that global warming really is a controversial issue, and with that I'm more on the side of climate change skeptics. So in my debate we argued that global warming impacts the economy, the biodiversity, and human health, and our evidence was strong, but at the same time correlation isn't the same as causation, and I felt that the opposition's evidence was much more convincing. The things that the opposition mentioned, like 625 million sub-Saharan Africans are without power, 60% of the entire African continent itself is without energy, and hunger is the #1 cause of death in the world, really swayed me to their side. And I learned that while going green and doing all what is necessary to combat climate change sounds great in theory, in reality it doesn't match. As a poor college student who lives off FAFSA and survives off cup noodles and questions of whether or not all of these, being a comm major is worth all of this debt, I can't even fathom or even care about if whether or not the countries in the Paris Treaty, or if I have a solar panel, or if I have a Prius, or if I'm recycling correctly. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that what I learned is that, I learned that before the world focuses more on issues that are, is it real or is it not, like global warming, the things that are very controversial, I think the world should focus more on things that can be seen and heard and seen directly, like hunger and poverty.
30 seconds.
And so all in all, I think that I'm more on the side of climate change skeptics now. Climate change is real, and that, you know, there's no debating that the climate is changing, but now I believe that it's not necessarily as big of a threat as I thought before, and that we don't really have to do every single thing just to mitigate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for not using all your time. On deck, Aliana. Time each other. So you'll be the obnoxious one? You'll be the obnoxious one? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, Jen, rock and roll.
Hello, I'm Jen.
Hi, Jen.
So for my debate, we debated whether global warming is catastrophic or not, and we were the opposition, which I thought was really fun because I love to play devil's advocate. However, I think that global warming actually is catastrophic. One, because lives in other places have already been taken due to effects from global warming. Two, because I'm from Miami and I lied, but it really is at extreme risk. And three, because it's our duty to care for the future of humanity. Before the debate, I knew that global warming was really dangerous just based on what I've been told in classes and stuff. But I never really had the opportunity to even look at the other side, which was really interesting for me, but I still stick to my beliefs. Taking the stance is really important because people in the future can't do that, so you're not going to look at your grandchildren dying from global warming consequences and be like, oh, I didn't really think it was a big deal when I wasn't thinking about it. So many people already have died due to it, especially because of carbon monoxide and cyanide in the air. It's become increasingly obvious that federal officials will not even begin to treat climate change as a real problem until many people die or lose their homes. And because Americans won't move on climate change until people really are visibly getting more hurt, and Miami is supposed to be the first one on the chopping block, my home and my family could be at risk if oceans continue to rise at the rate that they are now. It's actually predicted to look like the Florida Keys, which to you guys might look like a vacation spot, but I'm not really down to live underwater. Also, it's already really hot and humid, and if it gets any more, it's actually been shown that it's going to be hard to even find a dry spot to stand, which I don't really want to do. Me, Aliana, and our opponents, I think, harmonized really well because we actually, since it was a value debate, we came up with different structures for what we were going to debate. So it was a debate over X and X, not X and Z, and just spewing out random details on why it was good or bad. Prior to my debate, I thought there was no way that I would be able to tell UCLA students that global warming wasn't catastrophic, so that was pretty fun. And after a lot of research, I actually was even further discouraged, but I also was sad that mine, along with other people's homes, could be at extreme risk. But I re-looked at the question and decided to construct an argument based on wordplay. So literally speaking, if global warming was on balance catastrophic, that's hard to prove based on all the responsibility that we placed onto the word catastrophic, or like I purposely placed onto the word catastrophic. Also, when looking on balance, Aliana and I were able to quantitatively outshine the negative effects of global warming that the government presented. Louis said that I shouldn't have used the word dangerous in reference to global warming because it's not much different than catastrophic, but Daniel and other people said that it helped us win the debate, so not sure which one I should have done, but I think that my strongest point was distinguishing catastrophic as sudden, and anyway, I think human lives have already been taken due to global warming, my own home is at risk, and it's our duty to care for the future of humanity.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Aliana.
Welcome. Are you still timing your... Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aliana. If you
Hi,
recall,
Aliana.
my partner Jennifer and I debated 2 weeks ago regarding whether or not global warming is, on balance, catastrophic. I'd like to take this time to remind you of my beliefs and background coming into the debate, recap the debate itself, and close by telling you why my perspective has largely stayed the same. When Jen and I were first assigned the opposition's perspective on this debate, I frankly didn't know how I was going to spin it. I went to a science and tech magnet school where I even took a class called Geosystems. Then I came here to UCLA where I took the cluster on climate change my freshman year and worked closely with a professor that's a member of the UN and helped to write the Paris Climate Accord. So it's fair to say that I had to get creative when the time came to frame my arguments. Yet even after the debate, my opinion on the topic of global warming is still strong and negative, but I found I was able to improve my critical thinking ability by learning how to analyze claims and evidence. I learned the most about how to argue and flip evidence to work in my favor. A lot of my references actually helped the government more than it did me, and my heart really wasn't in what I was saying. To remind you, my 3 arguments were: 1, global warming is not causally linked to catastrophe; 2, global warming is a phenomenon that can successfully be mitigated and adapted to; and 3rd, that global warming actually has the capacity to help struggling communities around the globe. If I were to debate again, I would have used better examples and done a better job of appealing to my audience's pre-existing set of values. For example, John's comment on my use of GMOs as evidence was spot on, as it's already a controversial issue, and I probably could have done a better job with a better example. I'd also like to point out that Jen did a great job of delivering her points and standing her ground across exams. I was especially impressed by her use of the word catastrophe because I think it really helps sway the audience in our favor. So all in all, I still hold the same belief that I started with, that is, that global warming is on balance catastrophic. I believe that the way we're headed, especially with the U.S. leaving the Paris Accord, is fatal to our environment. Everything I've ever been taught has reinforced this idea. However, I've learned to take what I see with a grain of salt. It's just as easy for climate fanatics, as well as climate deniers, to misconstrue the facts in their favor. Ultimately, while my arguments didn't mirror what I personally believe is right, I learned a good lesson in terms of argumentation. I'm now better able to apply critical thinking skills not only to this topic, but also whatever other conflicts I may face in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't have an on-decker. Sorry. Allison.
That does not exist.
Okay. Sydney. And then Mr. Patel.
Yeah. Just never shut up.
Okay, good.
Hi, my name is Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
Jen and Aliana, I was also on the debate of if climate change only balance is catastrophic or not. Coming into this class, I believe the typical global warming is horrible, that we're responsible for killing all these polar bears, that we're killing all these people, and that we're killing our planet. However, when I started researching for my debate, I realized it wasn't as easy to find the evidence that I wanted as I thought. Because before this, I'd always been taught that, oh, global warming is horrible, look at all the glaciers melting, look at all the tornadoes, look at the floods. And so when I tried actually finding evidence for this, it was very difficult to find credible evidence that was not already debunked by skeptics who showed that the models were not correct or something like that. And sure enough, during my debate, my opponents, they did a great job, obviously, and they threw all that evidence back in my face. They threw all of that skepticism right back at me, and I already saw that when I was looking through all my research. So I just think it was interesting that even though we're taught, and that we see on social media all the time, that global warming is such a big problem, like as we saw when Trump dropped out of the Paris Accords, people are like, oh God, this is so horrible to a country, but you realize they have no evidence to back up their claims. I realize now that even though I do now agree more with the skeptics, I want to look at both sides of the argument because I think both sides manipulate their evidence. So I think it's very difficult to say one is more credible than the other when both sides are doing this. There was a fact being thrown around about the 97% of scientists agreeing that like climate change is due to human activity. But when I looked more at the Pew Research Center for this, it was everyone was manipulating their data. They looked at 11,944 papers, and only 33% of these publications actually took a firm stance on what side they believed in. And then from that, they looked at they got the 97% statistic, but they kept like showcasing this as like out of these almost 1,200 papers, 97 people agreed, but it was really misconstrued. So that's why I believe that you really need to look into the evidence and the methodology of all these people to know which ones really stand and like which ones are credible. Also, like going back to social media, people now on social media, mostly millennials, it's like a time when the Inconvenient Truth came out when they were in like younger grade school. And it was being taught in some classrooms. So we haven't learned otherwise. We've been taught that global warming is happening. We need to turn off the lights. We need to save water. We're thinking about all these stuff. So we've never been taught the other side of the equation. So after this class, I just realized that I need to be more skeptical about everything. And I need to look at the evidence behind things. I just can't accept things as proof just because I see tweets on Twitter about it, just because I see articles on Facebook. I really need to look behind the scenes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On deck is Cameron.
Hey everyone. Can I start?
Go.
I'm Patel. And
Hi, Patel.
let me start directly. Growing up in India, one of the significant value that I developed was thinking about others first and make decisions based on that. That led me to interest in healthcare and biology. I witnessed flood, droughts, excessive heat waves, not one time, many times when I was living in India. And the strange thing is, I lived in India for 18 years. Last year, I went back and I had a trouble breathing out because of air pollution. This made me believe that global warming exists. Studying microbiology and ecology, understanding the scientific aspect of it, this belief turned into a fact that for me, the global warming actually exists. Before and after the debate, global warming is catastrophic or not, my values and stand remains the same since I value humans and ecosystems. But it was great to listen both sides of argument. Talking about health, I'm more interested in preventing diseases rather than getting diseases and then curing them. That takes a lot of time. I believe that new diseases were discovered after Industrial Revolution. For example, let's talk about Ebola. It's a virus, basically. And for me, understanding the life cycle of a virus and how we prevent is more important than curing the disease like Ebola. This lead me into my second question that I had, that why disease happens, basically. I think it's because unbalance of the ecosystem. Small changes like increase in 1 degree Celsius in temperature doesn't affect us, but these microbial organisms get affected by this rising in temperature and change in temperature. There are many useful organisms, and many of them start malfunctioning as the temperature changes. Talking about the economy, the cost of bringing back this extinct species is in billions. I agree that it is expensive, but in future it will be worth it. According to me, expenses shouldn't come into weigh on this serious issue of global warming. To summarize, I think global warming affects ecosystem, play a vital role in introducing new diseases to human.
30.
As a byproduct, economy gets affected, And I think the value that I had about thinking of others first and making decision, problem like global warming, I believe if everyone has the similar value, we can actually solve the problem like global warming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Cameron. On deck, Sarah. And then Genevieve. Do I have your, I do. Thank you. Power stance, feet wider than your shoulders. Good. Thank you.
Alright, so when I first signed up for this class, I was like, principles of argumentation, I got this in the bag. Went to my dad, I was like, you're not going to believe what class I signed up for. An arguing class. He's like, Cam, like, you go, girl. Like, I've never met a more argumentative person in my life. I was like, thanks, that's kind of mean, but I'll make you proud anyways. Anyways, little did he know, little did I know, I would be doing a debate on the politicization of science. I'd also be debating against Alan. And I'm going to be real here, I don't really know much about politics. Don't really know much about science, so the fusion of the two was like my worst nightmare. And before researching this topic, I thought that like the integration of politics and science sounded like a great idea. Like more stuff could get moving, more innovation could be made. But then after I like educated myself, did some more research on the topic, I realized that politicization of science only taints science, and that doesn't benefit society as a whole. So the whole purpose of science is to find facts and in turn benefit society. And the whole politicization of science clouds science's validity. Like science should not, since science is truth, it shouldn't be at the hands of a politician just to manipulate it and change it to push their political agenda. And because I'm not a climate change expert, like looking back before this class, I wouldn't have been able to tell the difference between scientific fact that had been manipulated by a politician versus the real thing. I mean, since I feel like my BS detector is 100 thanks to Professor Miller, I might be able to, sort it out now. And the other evidence that moved me was that private funding really helps push endeavors of young researchers. As an entrepreneurship minor, I'm always thinking of like new, creative, innovative like app ideas and stuff like that. So I know how much private funding really paves the way for like that sort of innovation. And yeah, so I've shown you basically the evidence of what has moved me and shaped my ideas of why I feel like politicization is truly undesirable. And I think that there should be no doubt in this room that I think that they should be separate entities. Like, I truly do think that. So, wrap this all up. I think my dad was right. Government side won. Sarah and I were pretty convincing. We beat you, Alan. And, yeah, so all in all, that's it. And I really enjoyed this class.
Thank you, Cameron. Okay, black. On deck, Genevieve. She here?
Yeah.
And after that, Alan.
So as Cameron mentioned, what I was assigned to argue is that the politicization of science is, in fact, undesirable. And when I first got assigned this topic, I thought, honestly, it would be a breeze. I generally maintain that where government is not necessary, they shouldn't be there. I generally believe that the government is there to maintain the basic building blocks of society.
Excuse me a minute. Can you put on, Jen, could you borrow your coat? I can't see you on the screen. You're wearing white.
Sorry, forgive me. My head was floating. Is that what it went?
You're supposed to say it's cream.
Oh yeah.
That's better. You can start over if you want to.
Start over? Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was first assigned the topic of debate, I thought it would be a breeze. I generally maintain that the government is there to provide the basic building blocks of society, that is infrastructure, national security, etc. And I believe that government had no business politicizing science, as they would only cloud and corrupt the truth. And the truth is that it's far more complex than that. Science is a very broad word, as is the word politicization and politicize, which I don't think we got into enough. And so what I now maintain is that certain sciences, namely sciences that have not been thrown around in the political arena, or sciences that in themselves have not become politicized, should be allowed to receive government funding and involvement and support, and etc. I will give examples. And sciences that have indeed become politicized only see the harms of further government intervention. So what does this mean? Science that has become politicized, science that hasn't become politicized. Things like medicine and cancer research, these things have not been thrown around in the political arena. Republicans and Democrats don't take different stances on whether or not we should cure cancer or find a disease for AIDS. That is not a politicized issue, but that still falls in the category of science. So I don't see any downside to the government funding an additional $1 billion into helping to cure cancer. They won't cloud that, they won't corrupt that. Where science has become politicized, like climate change, we've all seen the result. In this class, half of us have changed our tune, and we didn't really know what we were thinking before, because that government and media, who's also to blame, has clouded our view and clouded our judgment. So, to sum up, I want to say that the government can only benefit in being involved in certain sciences that haven't already been corrupted and tainted by politics. This not only extends to medicine, but also certain things such as space exploration and travel, which nowadays you have someone like Elon Musk getting involved, so you can say the private sector can take it over, great. But 60 years ago in the space race, Elon Musk wasn't there. So if you maintain that politicization in science is always undesirable, then could we not have participated in the space race? Or certain things like the atomic bomb and the nuclear bomb, no one in the private sector is going to do that. And so I've learned from this debate that I guess our prompt was a little too vague and we should have specified, namely the politicization of science is undesirable. What kind of science and what is politicization? That's what I've learned. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Genevieve? Hi, Genevieve. Hi. Nice and blue. Very good.
Yes, it is.
Blue. Rock and roll.
As Cameron Lovely had mentioned, I'm on Team Allen. In this debate, we debated whether the politicization of science is desirable or not. I'm going to talk about my previous experiences and my thoughts before this debate and after, and kind of where I am right now. Before this debate, just a little bit of background research on me. I'm from Berkeley, California. So I'm very anti-government, very anti-business, very much want to be a free world where everyone just gets along and everyone's happy and turns off the light, right? We don't live in that world, unfortunately. So going into this, I thought, okay, government, do I really want to go on their side? Not particularly. We've seen how Sarah mentioned the Bush administration kind of neglected science, covered it up, did some pretty awful things. But also, okay, privatization of science. Tobacco. They have not treated science in the way that we would have wanted. They clouded it, they manipulated it, and along with, you could say, oh, well, you know, companies like BP, they're cleaning up the oceans. Well, yeah, after they spill a bunch of oil in it. So, okay, I have the private sector and I have the business sector. Before this, I was like, private and the government sector. I was like, I don't want either of this, but I guess I'll talk about the government a little bit more. And I learned a lot. I learned about funding and vaccination research, I learned about cancer research, but I also learned about the environment and how people try to take their evidence to back up whatever they want to say. And by saying one thing, they can then collect another and still get their point across. And they made some really great points about privatization and how that has had a lot of good benefits. So there's been good points on either side, and there's also been neglectful points on either side. So here, right now, what do I say? I say that scientists, they're not living in an ivory tower. They're affected by these politics, and what their research is going to be affected. If we make a law that outlaws all science research on anything, on cancer, on environment, then if it's against the law, no one's going to be able to do it. So obviously, we can't have that happen. We also need politicians being smart about their politics, being smart about the policies they're making, because a lot of these policies have to do with scientific evidence. I had a friend who went to the Capitol to lobby against Planned Parenthood getting cut funding. She went and talked to a bunch of senators and talked about her experience with Planned Parenthood, about how she got all her health insurance through it. And what she found out when she was talking to one senator, he was talking about it, and she was like, well, you know, women only have cervixes, blah, blah, blah. And he said, wait, I don't have a cervix? And he was like, no, you're male, so therefore you do not have cervix in your anatomy. This senator, a representation of our politicians, did not know he didn't have a cervix. So obviously scientists do need a say, I know, right? Scientists do need a say in the politics to be able to have good politicians make good policy choices. So at the end of the day, am I on either side? Should it be depoliticized or politicized? I don't think either. I think that we should be making informed decisions based off the scientific research we have that hopefully won't be clouded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice extemporaneous presentation. Alan?
To your right.
Where's your... Thank you. On deck is Sobera. Sorry. Sobera. Don't call me Sobria. Sobrabra? Okay. Don't call me late for dinner. Okay, good. Rock and roll.
I would like to start by apologizing to Cameron, Sarah, and Genevieve. I won't be talking about the politicization of science because I sucked at that debate. I will be talking about environmental concerns and economic development because I think I did pretty good in that debate. When I started the class, I had told a lot of you guys that I was a climate skeptic from the very start. But to be honest, because I was never really interested in the topic, I really didn't know what a climate skeptic was. And I truly learned more about my own personal beliefs when we had a debate against Krystal and John, in regards to whether or not economic development should take precedent over environmental concerns. And doing the research, looking at the sub-Saharan Africa and the inhalation of smoke was one piece of evidence that really struck home with me. Millions died because of burning wood and fuels at their home, and that smoke inhalation would kill them. Now, I might not be born in Africa or have any relations to anybody in Africa, but that issue isn't only in Africa. In Armenia, where my parents immigrated from, thousands of people died for the same reason. They don't have access to electricity, they don't have access to conventional warming systems, so they too resort to mechanisms like burning wood at home. Thousands of Armenians, people that I am close to, family members, my own people, die from the same reason. Why? Because they don't have an access to energy. I have grown to become a climate skeptic to an advocate for economic development. Especially when there's such a clear-cut relationship between wealth and the usage of energy. Who are we to say that we should restrict people to use energy just for environmental concerns? Now, look, I'm not here going and burning trees and saying, screw the environment. I do care about the environment. But my value has always been the preservation of human life. And I've shown, the evidence that I looked through showed that the real way to save human life is to create wealth and reduce poverty. 22,000 people every day dying from hunger. I grew up on welfare with my parents. I knew the struggles of living in a low-income household. And these people in developing countries are in far worse conditions than I am. I never thought of when I was a young child, oh, the sun is super hot today, we should do something about that. What I thought is, am I going to have food today? Because environmental concerns, although maybe are so much more abstract and models, they predict the future, but economic development is something you see. You see the money in your wallet. You see the food in front of you. And yes, I got criticized for being too loud in all of my debates, but it's something that is very personal to me, something that I have experienced, and that is why I have become a strong advocate for economic development. Thank you all.
Thank you. Lewis? Lewis? Carol Lewis?
I think you're going
Louis?
in
Is it Louis?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have your
Yeah, it's right there, but I think you skipped part of
Miss Lloyd and
my debate.
Who did I skip?
Lloyd and
Lauren and Escanio.
Oh, really? Sorry. Which group are you?
We're policy. They're the very.
Yeah.
You want to see the spreadsheet?
Yeah, they're.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, who did I skip? No, they're by group. Yeah, okay. Group, then alphabetical. Okay, good. So, go.
Okay. So, hi.
So who's on deck? You'll be on deck. Okay.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Sabera.
Hi, Sabera.
In recent years, global warming has been a controversial topic, specifically for its threat to the existence of mankind. Personally, I always felt that the subject was kind of abstract, impersonal, and far off into the future. Yet from taking this class, I have learned that if we don't act now, then the future repercussions are really
Sabera, I have to stop you.